I'm about to say something that's going to annoy every fitness influencer selling you a pre-workout. You've heard the rule 100 times. Fuel up before you train, or your session doesn't count. Carbs an hour before. A snack if it's a long session. Never lift, run, or push hard on an empty stomach, or your body will eat its own muscle just to get through it. Rome never got that memo. A Roman legionary marched 20 miles a day, boots kicking up dust on a road built by the men who marched it before him, carrying 30 kilograms of armor, weapons, and tools on his own back. And he did it on a few bites of hard biscuit and a swig of sour water. No breakfast worth the name. No mid-march refuel. Nothing close to a real meal until he'd already dug the ditch and raised the palisade of the knight's camp with his own hands. By the rule you've been told your whole life, that man should have collapsed by noon. Instead, that exact routine built the army that conquered most of the known world, and did it for centuries, without ever changing the method. So how does 30 kilograms and 20 miles run clean on almost nothing? Stay with me, because the answer isn't that the Romans were tougher than you. It's that they understood something about fueling hard effort that most of the modern fitness industry has completely turned backward. And once you see how the pieces fit together, you'll understand exactly why it worked, and why doing it your way might be working against you. Walk into any gym today and the advice is identical, no matter who's giving it. Eat before you train, or you'll lose muscle. Skip a meal before a hard session and your performance tanks. Keep the tank topped up, always, or your body switches into some kind of emergency shutdown. The Romans would have looked at that advice and asked why you'd want a full stomach in the middle of a fight in the first place. Because here's what an actual day on campaign looked like. And it starts with the load, not the food. After the reforms credited to the general Gaius Marius, in the last years of the 2nd century BC, the Roman legionary stopped relying on a long, slow baggage train to carry his gear. Instead, he carried it himself, including armor, shield, weapons, tools for digging and building camp, cooking equipment, and several days of rations, all strapped to a wooden pole slung over one shoulder. All in, that load ran somewhere around 30 kilograms, sometimes more. The men carrying it were mocked, affectionately, as Marius's Mules, a nickname that stuck for the rest of Roman history because it was accurate. A single legion could now move fast, without waiting on a train of wagons and pack animals to catch up. And they didn't walk casually under that weight. Vegetius, the Roman writer who compiled the army's own training standards a few centuries later, recorded the benchmark recruits were drilled to hit: 20 Roman miles in 5 hours at regular marching pace, 24 at a quicker one, a steady, sustainable cadence, not a sprint, closer to 4 or 5 kilometers per hour, held for hours without breaking rhythm. Training marches were run with gear made deliberately heavier than what they would actually carry in the field, and with practice, weapons built twice the weight of the real ones. If real combat ever felt lighter than training, that was the point. So before you get anywhere near the food, understand what this actually was. 30 kilograms, held at a steady pace for hours, day after day. That is not a casual walk. By any modern definition, that is a serious, loaded carry workout, repeated for a living. Notice, too, what that pace was not. Roman commanders never asked for a sprint. They asked for a cadence a man could hold, hour after hour, without burning through everything he had in the first 3 miles. That single choice, steady effort over maximum effort, is part of why the light stomach approach could even work in the first place. You cannot run a fasted body flat out for hours. You can absolutely march it, at a controlled, sustainable pace for as long as the job requires. Now here's the part that should actually stop you. During that entire effort, the legionary was not eating a real meal. His marching rations were built to be carried and eaten on the move in small amounts. Hard biscuit called bucellatum, tough enough to survive weeks in a pack, sometimes softened in a little wine or water, a bite of salted pork or hard cheese if he had it, and to drink, not water alone, but posca, a sharp mix of water and soured wine or vinegar, cheap, portable, and sour enough to cut through the taste of whatever local water was actually available. The old General Cato the Elder was said to have lived on plain water during his own campaigns, reaching for the vinegar only when his thirst turned serious. It gave a small hit of calories and salt. Its acidity likely helped kill off whatever was living in questionable water, and it did nothing close to filling a stomach. That was it. No hot meal at midday, no protein bar every 2 hours. Small bites, sour water, and 30 kilos on his back for hours until the day's march was done. Ask yourself honestly, how many workouts have you skipped or gone easy on because you hadn't eaten enough beforehand? Here's the part that explains why the Romans never had that problem. A full stomach during hard, sustained effort is a liability, not an advantage. Digesting a heavy meal pulls blood toward the gut, away from the muscles doing the actual work. It's the same reason a fed sprinter runs heavier than a hungry one. A legionary carrying real weight for real hours could not afford to spend blood and energy digesting lunch, while his legs needed everything the body had. Keeping the stomach light wasn't a hardship they endured. It was a tactical decision, made on purpose, every single day. But a light stomach only works if something else is already stored and ready to burn. And that's where the Roman system gets genuinely clever. The real fuel for the march wasn't eaten during the march at all. It was eaten the night before. The daily grain ration, roughly 1 kilogram or more of wheat or barley per man, was ground and cooked the evening before into pulse, a thick porridge, or baked into panis militaris, a dense military bread. This wasn't a light snack. It was a substantial, carbohydrate-heavy meal, eaten with enough time to actually digest before anyone picked up a pack. That meal is what filled the tank. The next day's march simply spent it down, slowly, hour after hour, while the body ran on what had already been stored rather than what was currently being chewed. This is exactly the pattern modern sports science eventually landed on by a completely different route. Load the fuel well before the effort, then let the body draw on it steadily, instead of trying to feed the engine while it's already running flat out. The Romans never measured glycogen. They just knew a man who ate heavy the night before could carry his kit all day, and a man who tried to eat heavy in the middle of it couldn't. And there's a second reason it worked, one that has nothing to do with any single meal. A body marched 20 miles a day for months at a stretch doesn't just burn through what it ate the night before, it adapts. Trained enough times to go hours under load without a real meal, the body gets better at pulling energy from what it already has stored, instead of demanding a constant top-up the moment it feels a gap. Modern training calls this metabolic flexibility. The Romans had no name for it. They just knew that a green recruit struggled through his first long marches, and a veteran who had done it 100 times barely noticed the miles. Compare that to how most people eat today: a snack every couple of hours, a bar before the gym, something small at the first hint of hunger, because we have been told the body cannot be trusted to run on its own reserves for more than 90 minutes. A legionary's body was trained to do exactly that, for hours, carrying real weight as a matter of routine. If you want the complete picture of how ancient discipline handled effort, food, and recovery as one connected system, not just for Roman soldiers, but as a way of training and living that actually holds up under real physical demand. That is exactly what the art of living like a man lays out in full. Link is in the description, so follow the chain so far. A soldier carried real weight for real hours on purpose. He kept his stomach deliberately light during that effort, because a full gut competes with working muscle for blood and energy. And none of that was possible without the heavy, carbohydrate-dense meal eaten the night before, giving the body something stored to draw from all day. Each piece depends on the one before it. Pull anyone out and the system stops working. Which raises the obvious question. If eating light during the hardest part of the day actually worked this well, why did it take the Roman army becoming the most successful military machine in history to prove it? Because none of this was an accident, and none of it was improvised. It was drilled. Vegetius is blunt about why recruits trained the way they did, so that hard conditions in the field would feel lighter than what they'd already survived in training. Marching 20 miles under a heavier load than they'd carry on campaign meant the real thing never came as a shock to a body that hadn't prepared for it. A soldier who had never trained his body to run on a light stomach under real weight would have folded the first time he had to do it for real. A soldier who trained that way for months before ever seeing a battlefield walked into the job, already adapted. And the results speak for themselves. This wasn't a trick used once. It was standard practice for centuries, across an empire that stretched from Britain to the edge of Persia, carried there by men who marched on almost nothing and built a fortified camp, complete with ditch and palisade, every single night after they arrived. No modern army has matched that combination of daily distance, carried load, and constructed fortification, sustained year after year, campaign after campaign, without a change in method. None of those men were doing this to prove a point about nutrition. They were doing it because it worked, because it let a legion move faster than anyone chasing it, and because centuries of trial against real enemies never gave them a reason to change it. So go back to the rule you've been told your whole life: fuel up before you train, or the session doesn't count. A Roman legionary would have told you that rule gets the order backward. You don't fuel the effort while you're in it. You fuel it the night before. Keep the body light while it's actually working, and trust the training you've already put in to carry you the rest of the way. 30 kilograms, 20 miles, a bite of hard bread, and a mouthful of sour water, and an empire built on top of it. The ancient way exists to recover what was lost. If this changed how you think about your next workout, you already know what to do.